think about what are the understandings and the goals that you have. Whenever we think about goals, I think it's helpful to think about what are the strategies and the methods that we're going to utilize to actualize those goals. And then if we're thoughtful, we need to think about how are we going to assess to what extent these particular methods or goals have helped us to actualize our goals. I want to underscore a number of understandings that are in the front of my mind, and I invite you right now to very critically assess in what ways you agree with what I'm saying, in what ways you want to argue with what I'm saying, and in what ways you want to aspire to what I'm saying. In some ways, this institute and the National School Climate Standards that we sent to many of you, that the National School Climate Council developed, are grounded in three essential questions. And it's an understanding about these three essential questions that we suggest need to drive your school community's climate improvement efforts. What kind of school do you want yours to be? And given this emerging vision that we'll be talking much more about later this morning, what kind of policies at a state and a district level and rules at a building level do you need to support this vision? And then what kinds of instructional and systemic or school-wide practices do you want to integrate into your school to again actualize this vision and these policies? These are three organizing questions, and your understanding of them, and I would suggest that these are understandings that we can't develop alone, not even just as a principal and a leadership team, but ideally this really needs to be the whole school community struggling to develop this vision together. These are, in my mind and heart, profound questions. Another basic understanding that I have, and I learned this the hard way, is that it really matters that we use reliable and valid measures to support our understanding. We know now that American public education, following business and medicine, is driven by measurement. And today, I believe there's 4 measures that are driving teacher and principal behavior: reading scores, math scores, science scores, and since so many kids were killed at Columbine, rates of physical violence. That is beginning to change, as I'll say more about in a few minutes, thanks to our keynote speaker, and a general backlash against the very narrow definition of what matters that's now defines NCLB. Another set of understandings that to me are basic and form a foundation for the next 3 days is that school climate measurement and improvement efforts matter because when we measure school climate, we are recognizing the social and emotional, ethical and civic, as well as intellectual aspects of learning in our school improvement efforts. And with that data, we can bring parents and guardians, students and school personnel together to think about how can we best coordinate educational, risk prevention, and mental health promotion efforts. Our school climate model, and in different ways over the course of the next 3 days, we'll be talking about our school climate improvement model, which is essentially the roadmap, an implementation strategy that we'll be talking about later, and a series of tools, many of which you have already. Among other things, these support transparent leadership and democratically informed school communities. And finally, this is a strategy that promotes meaningful engagement. Students, parents, and educators learning and working together. We know that in so many of our schools, particularly economically disadvantaged schools, over half of our students are disengaged. whether they're in school or not, and many, many, many drop out, they're not present. Learning is not meaningful and engaging, and that is a tragedy. We suggest that school climate refers to the character and quality of school life. When we think about understandings, definitions matter. And this consensually developed definition grew out of the early work of the National School Climate Council. We suggest that it's based on patterns of people's experience of school and reflects norms, goals, and values, how we treat one another, teaching and learning, leadership practices, and organizational structures. This is a definition that's really worth critically considering of what's a positive and sustainable school climate. And the Council suggests just this, that it's one that fosters youth development and learning necessary for a productive, contributing, and satisfying life in a democratic society, and includes norms and values and expectations that support people feeling safe, socially, emotionally, and intellectually, as well as physically. It's a climate that supports people feeling engaged and being respected. It's a place where people, students, families, and educators work together to develop, live, and contribute to a shared vision. It's a place where we as the grown-ups model and nurture an attitude that emphasizes the benefits and satisfaction from learning, and it's a place where every person contributes to the operations of the school and the care of the physical environment. Understandings shape goals. What are your goals? We've all come here today, clearly and or not so clearly, with a set of personal goals, professional goals, and organizational goals. And I invite you, if you feel like it, to write these down in this wonderful reflection booklet. We know that goals drive behavior. And also, the C staff and faculty want to be responsive to your goals. So if in any way you've come here with goals and needs that are not being responded to, I request you let me and or fellow faculty staff members know. During the Institute, you're going to be learning about, experientially and otherwise, a number of strategies and methods that I believe can help you and us and your colleagues to actualize school climate improvement goals. How do we measure school climate? That's a really critical decision. And there's a workshop at the end of today all about that, and what are the strengths and the limitations of current school climate survey assessment strategies. What are the range of ways, instructionally in the classroom, that we can further the kind of norms and values and expectations in learning, social and emotional and civic, as well as reading and writing and arithmetic, that support children, students, becoming the kind of people you most want them to be, and a democracy most needs them to be. I always remember in a way that's very moving to me, as hypocritical as Jefferson was in certain respects, and Adams, this was their vision for American public education, that this would be a process where children developed the skills and the knowledge and the dispositions that supported them being an engaged citizen in a democratic community. And I think that's a really neat thing to think about. How is our school community a democratic community? It's paradoxical because in some ways schools are truly a dictatorship. You know, the principal's not elected. The principal's in charge. And in a certain way, it needs to be that way. And yet we know that if the principal or the superintendent leads like a dictator, nobody follows. And the principal and the superintendent can lead in democratically informed ways. And in many respects, that's what the school climate implementation roadmap that you have is all about. You're also going to be learning about a variety of systemic or school-wide strategies which can help you to actualize these goals. We're always measuring. Whenever we meet someone for the first time, we're taking a measure of them. Are they safe? Do they like me? Is it going to be okay to be in this relationship? And in schools, formally and informally, we're always measuring, and as we all know, that drives teacher behavior. It's a really neat thing to think about, and we'll be talking about this in different ways. What do you measure? How is that affecting your being a teacher and a learner? Measurement ideally supports learning. And how are we being ongoing learners individually, professionally, and as a member of a learning community? I hope that some of these questions engage you. I hope that you're beginning to really think about what are the understandings that you've come here with? What are the goals that you've come here with? What are the strategies, pedagogic strategies, school improvement strategies that you're already utilizing to make your school community is safer, more supportive, engaging, helpfully challenging, and hopefully at least sometime fun place for kids and grown-ups to be. And I hope that these 3 days shakes you up in helpful ways. I hope it gives you really concrete ideas. And I hope that you have a chance to connect with other people here. In addition to the faculty, we are an amazing group with an amazing array of experiences and expertise, and always one of the neat things about these summer institutes is that people get to meet one another and develop new professional relationships, sometimes friendships, that support your teaching and learning. Thank you.